Today we are going to deal with external feature of a spinal cord. Then we discuss internal feature of spinal cord. In the external feature, we are going to discuss regarding these four things. What are that four things? These are the features and sulci. Then there is attachment of a spinal nerve. Then there is enlargement and then at the end cord icona. Regarding these things, we will start from the sulcus and sulci. So regarding sulcus and sulci and features. When you look anterior aspect, in the anterior aspect there is a anterior median feature. Then there is anterolateral one and anterolateral sulci in 2 number. Like in the image, when you look, this is midbrain and over it is a spinal cord. Okay, pons medulla and cord. So here is C1. So after there, in the middle size, this is middle of, and this is called anterior median feature. Beside this, there is 2 anterolateral. These are anterolateral sulci, 2 anterolateral sulci. When we go for posterior aspect, now posterior aspect. In the posterior aspect, there is posterior median sulcus, and there is postero intermediate sulci in 2 number, and then there is like posterolateral sulci in 2 number. So when you look in the image regarding posterior side, so when we draw the image, this is brain portion. So thereafter there is a spinal cord arising in the posterior side, so making a double diamond. This is enlargement, this is cervical enlargement, and this is lumbar enlargement. It is a rough diagram. So after that, here is a posterior median sulcus. This is posterior median sulcus in between. After that, there is two intermediate. Then there is 2 lateral. So now in the diagrammatic, this is posterior, these 2 are intermediate, and then the outer side red, these are the posterior lateral. And in this structure, what is going on? And again here is like terminale, and there is a lots of nerve passing through it. So when we look in the anterior metaphyseal, there is like anterior metaphyseal, there is a deep and extended. It is deep and extended along entire length, and in this anterior metaphyseal there is a content content stay in the anterior spinal artery, and in the anterior it is like here is like exist of ventral root fibers from these fibers. Now regarding in the posterior side, when we look for posterior side, in the posterior it is like faint longitudinal groove inside this from its form floor and septum floor for the septum of neurological tissue like posterior medium septum is from posterior median septum and here it's extend from like variable extension. Here is the not from entire length, it is here is a variable extent. And regarding this in the posterior lateral sulcus there is like dorsal in trans of dorsal root fibers in the posterior lateral sulci there is a entrance of dorsal root fibers. It is all regarding fissure and sulci. So now we are moving on attachment of the nerves, spinal nerves. So initially we have also discussed, but again we are going to discuss regarding the attachment of the spinal nerves. Attachment of a spinal nerve. In the attachment, like there is 31 pair of spinal nerves, and when we look, there is 31 pair. There is 8 cervical in pair. There is 12 thoracic. There is 5 lumbar and 5 sacral, and 1 in number. There is coccygeal. These are the nerves which originate from a spinal cord, and each of the spinal nerve attached cord by 2 roots. Like there is anterior, looking in this image, like it is anterior median fissure and this is posterior. So there is 2 roots like dorsal root and ventral root. From dorsal root there is a ventral root and dorsal root. This is dorsal root for the sensory, but the ventral root for the motor. So when we look the ascending descending track, in the sensory there is ascending track. It is ascending track, for the motor descending. And moving on, all of the, and there after that, and all the nerves of the root, each root, regarding a point, there is each root is made of number of rootlets that arises from a spinal cord over a certain length. Now, one thing for important point, there is 8 cranial nerve emerges between 7th cervical and first thoracic vertebra. Sorry, here is a mistake. There is 8 cervical nerve emerges between 7th cervical and 1 first thoracic vertebrae. This is for understanding. There is now it is attachment. There is a spinal segments. So now moving on the discuss regarding the segments, the spinal segments. Regarding spinal segments, it is a part of a spinal cord. Parts of a spinal cord which bear the spinal nerves and right and left axis. Like this is a spinal cord, and it is divided like this way. These are the segments. These are spinal segments, and from here there is like outgoing of roots from the segments, root going outside or inside. Like when we look this spinal segment, it is not visible externally, and there is a 31 spinal segment, a spinal segment. Like in this way, this is 1 segment, 2 segment, 3 segment, 4 segment, 5 segment, dot. This is 31 segment, and from there is some root knobs are living in this way. But one thing for understanding, a spinal segment and vertebra doesn't lies in same place, same level, lies in same level. It is important highlights. So for the spinal segment, there is some division, like based on the region. There is a spinal segment, and then there is a vertebra level. When we look from the vertebra level, where is the sting, and there is a rule known as general rule. How to learn general rule. So moving on, there is upper cervical, lower cervical, then upper thoracic, lower thoracic, and then there is lumbar and sacrum, sacral and coaxial. It is so. When we look at the spinal segment, in upper there is C2, and from the for the lower cervical there is C6, and when we look in the vertebral level, where is it staying? where it is lying. So when look a spinal segment, so upper cervical C2, so then at the level of C2. But when we look for the lower cervical, there is like one decrease S5 C5. For this, when we look, these are in the same. When we look, these are in the same level, and these are decreased by one. So they, in the general rule, we can write in same level, then there is a decrease by one. So one vertebra above, above, like in this image. When we look C6, if here is the C6 cervical segment. When you count the vertebra, 1 2 3 4 5 6, here is below, there is a below C6 vertebra, but above the segment C6. So above one, we can look for in this way. So when we will go for upper thoracic, in the upper thoracic is T5 and lower thoracic is T10. So upper thoracic, if we look in the level of vertebra, there is like T5, T3 come into T3, and when we look for this, there is a T7 where in this segment, like this is T5, okay, and T5 coming from where? T5 coming from level of T3, level of vertebra of T3. So, and when we look for the T10, it is coming from T7. In this image there is not accurate, so when we look at the real image, there is like that way. So basically I am saying that if we look at the spinal segment T10, then it lies on the vertebral level of T7. And when we look for the general rule, here is difference of two, the like two vertebra above, and when we look in three vertebra above. Again, when we go for the lumbar is L1 to L5. So here is like T10 to T11, it's 3 to 5 vertebra above. And when you go for coaxial and sacral, there is S1 and S1 to S5. S1 to S5 is sacral, and there is coaxial 1. So it lies on T12 to L1, and above L1, above 6 to 10 vertebra above. When we can identify like in this way, it is a short chart from neuroanatomy of Bisram Singh. Now we are moving on for the enlargement. There is not much about the enlargement, so in this here we can in enlargement means there is two enlargements. Again, initially we have also discussed, like there is cervical enlargement, and another one is lumbar enlargement. Regarding cervical enlargement, it lies when we look for the spinal segment C5 to T1, and when we look for the vertebra, so there is C3 to T1 vertebrae. This is for a spinal segment. And why it is cervical enlargement? So there is the like corresponding, there is forming the brachial plexus, correspond to the brachial plexus, and it's like it is diameter like 3.8 cm at the C6 segment. when you look in this image. Where is the image? Here we can look. Here is a little bit enlargement, we can see, and we can see also here is a little bit enlargement. These are the lumbar and cervical enlargement. Moving on, lumbar enlargement. In the lumbar, it lies L2 to S3 of a spinal segment. Segment spot vertebra T9 to L1 vertebrae. Like why here is the lumbar plexus, and that leads to the like there is enlargement, and it's like 3.5 cm at S1 segment. Now moving on, cauda equina. The last one is our topic is cauda equina. So in the cauda equina, getting this cauda equina. Cauda means tail, and equina means horse type of tail. Like it contain cauda equina, like this is like conus medullaris. From cauda medullaris there is like here is terminale, hilum terminale, it is called hilum terminale, and after that there is one which is coaxial root nerve. Then there is S5, S4, S2, S3. This type of nerve arise from here. L1, L2, L1 to S5 are arised, and it's look like tail of the horse. So it is known as, this is known as cauda equina. Cauda equina. Moving on, consist of root of 4 pair of lower lumbar nerve, 5 pair of coxsacral, sacral, and 1 pair of coaxial nerve regarding this. And this nerve emerges respective vertebral foramen, intervertebral foramen, respected emerge from respective foramen. This is all regarding correction officer. Now we are going to discuss regarding arterial supply, and this video is ended off in the arterial supply, and then again in next video we discuss regarding internal visa. Arterial supply, it's supplied by like anterior spinal artery, then there is two posterior spinal artery, and then there is segmental arteries. Like there is in the segmental artery, there is a spinal branch, a spinal branches of deep cervical, ascending cervical, then there is posterior intercostal, and lumbar, and there is lateral sacral and lateral sacral arteries. There is 8, when we look 8 anterior and 12 posterior. Radicular artery also, arteries. So arterial supply regarding this. Anterior spinal artery, its supply 2/3 of cord anterior 2/3, and 2 posterior spinal artery, and 2 posterior artery 1/3 of anterior part. And this is regarding externally. When we look in this image, these are segmental spinal artery from thoracic, lumbar, sacral, cervical, and this is a left posterior intercostal artery and going forming some branches like segmental artery, and this is anterior spinal artery, and posterior there is 2 posterior spinal arteries. And when you look the blood supply in the cord section of this, there is forming like rudimentary radicular artery. So anterior, posterior, here is gray matter, this is gray matter. We're looking in this side, there is anterior artery, posterior artery, and from here segmental artery is going on. These are the segmental artery and going anterior artery going inside the gray matter, and some of going and forming the anastomosis. Posterior artery and segmental artery. This is segmental artery. From the posterior artery going and forming the anastomosis and forming rudimentary artery, and this is the radicular artery, anastomosis and forming radicular artery inside this. This is blood supply inside or in the internal structure of the spinal cord. So we have completing in this video. Now in next video we have discussed internal features.